You've been taught to believe only what you can see. But that's exactly why you've been blind from the very start. From the moment you opened your eyes, the world began lying to you. It told you that what's real is only what's solid, what's measurable, what's external. It said that reality stops at your skin, that your consciousness is nothing more than a byproduct of your brain, and that anything you can't see or touch is just make-believe. But buried beneath that noise, beneath the dogma, the distractions, and the programming, is an ancient truth. One that has always been there. One that terrified rulers throughout history. A truth so powerful it had to be hidden in plain sight. And that truth is this: the universe is not made of matter. It's made of mind. Everything you think is real is actually just a reflection of something invisible. Hermeticism wasn't just some old-school philosophy. It was a warning and a blueprint. It showed us that reality is layered, shaped by forces we can't see, guided by intelligent energies, and rooted in something older than light itself, the ether. If you've never heard that word before, it's not because it doesn't exist. It's because you were never meant to remember it. You weren't taught to see the world as it truly is. You were trained, yes, trained, to perceive only what fits inside the tight little frame of materialism. From your earliest memories, your senses were filtered. Your awareness dulled. You were shaped to serve a system that depends on your blindness. Look around. Everything you've been taught about reality starts with the idea that only the measurable matters. That atoms, molecules, and physical laws explain everything. That anything beyond that, like energy, intention, or spirit, is just some New Age nonsense, or worse, insanity. But the ancients didn't think that way. The Hermeticists didn't. The mystics didn't. The initiates from forgotten spiritual schools didn't. They knew something we've been conditioned to forget. Reality isn't just what you see. It's layered. What's visible is just the surface. Beneath it flows an invisible current, a subtle force that connects all things. The ancients called it Aether. And, no, that wasn't just superstition. Aether was central to how they understood the cosmos. It wasn't just spiritual fluff. It was considered the living breath of the divine, the medium through which thought became form. It wasn't something separate from you. It was in you, around you, through you. It connected heaven to earth, mind to matter, thought to experience. And get this, it wasn't just the mystics who believed in it. The early scientists did too, until the narrative shifted. See, the war on ether didn't begin in temples. It began in universities, in lecture halls. It happened during the shift from metaphysics to mechanism, from reverence to reductionism. Suddenly, ether became a threat. Why? Because it confirmed something dangerous, that consciousness isn't trapped in the brain. That energy isn't just about force, it's about intention, and that human beings might be more than just meat machines. If ether was real, then the soul was real. And if the soul was real, then the systems built to control bodies wouldn't be enough to control minds. That couldn't be allowed. So ether was erased, quietly, systematically, replaced by equations and lifeless particle models, models that stripped the observer out of the equation, that separated the spirit from the self. But here's the thing, they never fully killed it. Traces of ether remain in every intuitive feeling you've ever had. In the way your presence shifts a room, in the fact that thought moves flesh, in how a dream can change direction mid-sleep, in how emotions can make you sick or heal you. These aren't glitches in the matrix. They're glimpses through the veil. The truth is, your entire experience of reality has been shaped to keep you on the surface. You've been trained to see form, not frequency. Names, not essence. But the Hermeticists, they knew better. They knew that behind every object is a vibration, and behind that vibration is mind. Ether was the bridge between what is seen and what causes it to be seen. Lose that bridge, and you lose your place in the cosmos. You become a prisoner of surfaces, trapped in your five senses, blind to the very forces that shape your life. That's why Hermeticism isn't just ancient wisdom. It's forbidden knowledge. It offers an escape from the perceptual prison you didn't even know you were in. And here's the real kicker. Once you start to understand ether, not just as a concept, but as a living presence, you begin to feel it, not as belief, but as something real, something alive. You feel it in the stillness, in the silence, in the space between your breaths. Some knowledge is too old and too dangerous to fully unpack here. But if you want to go deeper, there's a way. Sign up to Insights Academy through the link in the description, and you'll receive a free copy of the Kybalion. It's free, it's uncensored, it's what you were never supposed to find. Because here's the secret no one told you. You weren't just cut off from ether. You were cut off from your ability to feel it. They drowned it out with noise, flooded your senses with screens, taught you to laugh at anything you couldn't measure. But here you are, still watching, still feeling. And if you're being honest with yourself, you're feeling it right now. That quiet pressure behind your thoughts, that subtle hum behind your routine, that flicker in the corner of your awareness that says, there's more. And guess what? There is more. Not everything that controls you wears a badge or waves a flag. Some of the most powerful forces shaping your life, you can't see them, but you've felt them. They're not physical, but they're real. They're ancient, subtle, and strangely familiar. You've experienced them before, even if you couldn't name them. The pressure to fit in, the fear of standing out, that inner voice whispering, you're not good enough, stay small, don't question. The Gnostics had a name for these forces. They called them Archons, interdimensional intelligences, not demons in the way pop culture portrays them, but forces whose job isn't to destroy you, it's to manage you, to contain your consciousness, to keep you locked inside the illusion. Their goal? To make sure you never realize what you really are. These entities don't float around with wings or horns. They hide in systems, in thoughts, in beliefs. They are the gatekeepers of perception. According to Hermetic and Gnostic traditions, Archons aren't evil in the way we usually define evil. They're not cartoon villains. They're energetic regulators. They thrive on predictability, on order, on repetition. They survive off your stability, off your routine. So every time you repeat the same habits, every time you follow the same patterns without questioning, you feed them, not metaphorically, energetically. Because the true battlefield isn't out there. It's your mind. When you were a child, you were fluid, imaginative. You didn't see boundaries like adults do. You felt things deeply, things you couldn't even explain. But over time, structure crept in. You were given words to replace those feelings. Rules replaced your instincts. Labels replaced essence. And that's when the Archons moved in. Not as monsters, but as ideas. They whispered things like, that's just how life is. Be realistic. Fit in. Don't try too hard. You're not ready. They taught you to fear your own expansion, to trade your curiosity for approval, to confuse comfort with wisdom. And the world we call society, it's their playground. The Archons don't need to imprison you with chains. They've built a world that does it for them. A world where compliance is rewarded, where resistance is pathologized, where attention is hijacked, where truth is buried under entertainment. where questioning authority is seen as dangerous. Every scroll, every algorithm, every slogan, it's all part of the web. And the deeper you get tangled in it, the farther you drift from your soul. But here's what most people never hear. The Hermeticists didn't just name the Archons. They revealed their weakness. Because the Archons aren't creators, they're imitators. They reflect. They copy. They repackage. They can only shape what you give them. And what they fear most is a light that shines from within. Not rebellion from the outside, but sovereignty from the inside. A mind that questions, a heart that remembers, a soul that refuses to conform. That's their kryptonite. And the thing is, you've already encountered them. Every time you've tried to make a major change in your life and suddenly felt this invisible resistance, not from the world, but from inside, that wasn't just fear. That was programming. That's the system trying to keep you in your assigned lane. See, you don't need physical chains when your mind is wired to avoid the door. But lately, something else has started to stir. That inner whisper, the one that's been growing louder every year, that's not just intuition. That's a memory of who you were before the layers of fear and conditioning. A memory of a time when your thoughts were your own, your dreams untouched, your will unbroken. And here's the good news. The Archons can't touch that part of you. They can only distract you from it. But here's what they don't want you to know. Once you recognize them, they start to lose power. Once you name that inner voice of doubt, not as yours, but as a parasite, it begins to shrink. Because awareness, it's acid to their influence. That's why they built a world of endless noise, to drown out your signal. But silence is making a comeback. Stillness is returning. And through that crack in the system, light is starting to pour in. They've controlled the outer world for generations, but the inner world, that was never theirs to keep. And once you reclaim it, no government, no belief system, no invisible entity can hold you ever again. There's a voice inside you. It's always been there. Subtle, ancient, unwavering. It's the whisper you ignored when you chose comfort over courage. It's the pull you felt toward truth when everyone else clung to the lie. And that voice? It's not your ego. It's not fear. It's not programming. It's your daemon. The unseen guide the Hermeticists spoke of, not as a symbol, but as a literal spiritual presence. And chances are, you've been trained your whole life to ignore it. In today's language, demon sounds evil, something to banish. But in ancient Hermetic, Platonic, and Gnostic teachings, the daemon was revered. It wasn't bad, it wasn't chaotic, it was your link to the divine. Your personal emissary from the realm beyond form. Think of it as a bridge between your lower self, tied to habits and illusion, and your higher self, rooted in purpose and eternal truth. Your daemon isn't out there somewhere. It lives in your consciousness. It speaks in symbols, synchronicities, emotions, dreams. And if you've struggled to hear it, it's not because it's weak. It's because the noise is deafening. From the moment you were a kid, you were taught to distrust that pull. You were rewarded for following rules, not instincts. For repeating facts, not asking questions. For listening to authority, not yourself. And every time that inner voice stirred, you were told it was just your imagination. But Hermeticists knew, imagination isn't fantasy. It's a form of perception. It's how you access the subtle realms, where your daemon lives. Your daemon isn't here to flatter your ego. It doesn't care how many followers you have, what car you drive, or how successful society says you are. It has one purpose, to guide you back to who you truly are. Not the version of you that was molded by fear, trauma, or expectations, but the raw, unfiltered soul that existed before all that. And here's the thing, when you ignore it, you feel it. That subtle anxiety, that dull ache, that quiet sense of being off track, even when everything looks fine on the outside, that's not just stress. That's soul dislocation. That's the cost of betraying your daemon. But when you listen, when you follow it, that's when the real shift begins. Not the path someone else planned for you. Not the life that checks boxes but empties your spirit. The real path. The one that's unique to you. The one that winds through mystery, challenge, and transformation. That's what the Hermetic path is all about. It's not about external success. It's not about being good in the eyes of the world. It's about alignment. Living in harmony with your daemon. Letting it guide you through the unknown, through discomfort, uncertainty, and growth. That's how initiates were tested in the ancient mystery schools. Not by how much they knew, but by how willing they were to surrender. To trust something deeper. To follow the voice within, even when it made no logical sense. And here's what makes it so tricky. Your daemon doesn't shout. It nudges, it waits, it speaks through symbols, through that weird feeling, through synchronicities. Every time you keep seeing the same numbers, every time a book falls off a shelf, every time you meet someone who shifts your life's direction, that's not random. That's your daemon, watching, guiding, not controlling, but offering. And in a world built to drown out that signal, choosing to listen? That's a radical act. The truth is, you don't have to find your daemon. It's never left. You've just been tuned to the wrong frequency. So how do you tune back? Start simple. Don't try to hear it in the chaos. Listen between your thoughts. In the quiet. In the stillness. That's where it speaks. And when you start to follow it, when you take that first step, everything begins to shift. Synchronicities ramp up. Your clarity returns. The fog lifts. You don't chase meaning anymore. You remember it. You stop trying to figure life out from the outside and start feeling it from the inside. You reclaim something that the world spent years trying to take from you. Spiritual sovereignty. You were never meant to walk blind. You were never alone in your seeking. The guide you've been looking for isn't out there. Not in a guru, not in a doctrine, not in some heavenly figure floating above. It's inside. That's your daemon. And once you follow that call, something wild happens. Your life begins to rearrange itself. People shift. Opportunities emerge. Old patterns break. Not because you forced them to, but because you aligned with a deeper current, one that was always there, waiting. Here's the bigger truth. The universe is mental, not metaphorically, not poetically. Literally. According to Hermeticism, everything begins in the mind, not your personal mind, but the divine mind. All of reality, what you see, what you feel, what you experience, comes from one source, a single field of pure intelligence. This isn't just spiritual woo. It's a law. In Hermetic philosophy, before matter, before energy, before even time, there was thought. Pure, undivided consciousness. The divine mind imagined the universe into being. It unfolded, not in chaos but in intelligence, not in randomness but in meaning. So what does that mean for you? It means you're not a biological accident. You're not just a collection of atoms hurtling through space. You're not a fluke. You're a thought within that divine mind. A living, breathing ripple in an infinite ocean of awareness. But here's the kicker. The world taught you the exact opposite. It told you that mind comes after matter. That consciousness is just a side effect of neurons firing. That your awareness is fragile and fleeting. But let's pause and ask the question most people avoid. What do you experience first in every moment? The world, or your awareness of it? Even modern science, when it dares to look, starts to whisper what the ancients already screamed. Quantum physics shows us that the observer affects the observed. That particles don't settle into reality until they're watched. That existence is not objective, but participatory. The deeper you dig, the more consciousness seems to shape reality. Hermeticists knew this thousands of years ago. The universe isn't filled with consciousness. It's made of consciousness. And when you get this, not just intellectually but viscerally, everything shifts. You stop chasing outside approval. Because you realize the world isn't happening to you. It's happening through you. Your beliefs shape what you see. Your focus carves your path. What you dwell on, you draw in. And no, it's not wishful thinking. It's the physics of awareness. That's what the Archons fear most, a mind that knows its own power, a soul that remembers its divine, doesn't obey out of fear. It creates. It aligns. It disrupts the game. That's why they told you all of this was nonsense. So you'd never discover your ability to shape your own life. Because the moment you realize you're not just in the universe, you are the universe, becoming aware of itself, the illusion collapses. And then the real journey begins. This is where the Hermetic principle, as above, so below, comes alive. It's not just a mystical phrase, it's a literal blueprint. The macrocosm and the microcosm reflect each other. The outer world and your inner world are not separate. They are mirrors. What happens inside you ripples out. Shift your mind, and the pattern shifts with it. That's why true spiritual growth isn't just personal, it's cosmic. Every insight you gain, every breakthrough you experience, every wound you heal, it doesn't just change you, it echoes through the field of reality. It affects the whole. You don't have to run away to a mountaintop to find the divine. You're swimming in it. Every sound, every breath, every flicker of intuition is the pulse of that same divine mind. When you meditate, when you reflect, when you feel awe, you're not escaping reality. You're tuning into its source. That's why silence is so sacred. It's not emptiness. It's the place where the voice of the all can finally be heard. And here's the most astonishing part. Just as you are within the divine mind, it is within you. The sacred isn't locked in temples. It's not sealed away in ancient books. It's pulsing behind your thoughts, waiting to be noticed. The Hermetic path doesn't take you away from the world. It takes you deeper into it, through awareness, through intention, through alignment. You've always been creating. Every thought, every word, every belief, it all shapes the world around you. So the question isn't whether you're shaping reality. The question is, are you doing it consciously, or are you letting someone else do it for you? Because here's the truth. The divine mind doesn't need your worship. It doesn't need your fear. It doesn't demand obedience. It only offers one eternal message. You are not separate. You never were. You are the seen and the seer, the thought and the thinker, the dream and the dreamer. And the moment you remember that, truly remember it, the illusion of separation dissolves. And you begin to understand what it means to be infinite. Long before gravity had a formula, long before light was broken into wavelengths, ancient minds already understood something we've forgotten. Everything is connected by something invisible. Not in a poetic way. Literally, that something was called ether. It wasn't just another element. It was the element, the breath between things, the space within space, the subtle medium that carried all vibration, all light, all thought. Not air, not space, not void, ether. It was the substance that allowed spirit to touch matter. That let thought become form, that moved consciousness through the body like electricity through a wire. Ether was the divine bloodstream of the universe. And then, one day, they flipped the switch. They said it wasn't real. Modern science didn't reject ether because it was disproven. It rejected it because ether was inconvenient. It didn't fit the mechanical worldview. It couldn't be bottled or boxed. Ether implied that reality was alive, fluid, responsive to intention. It meant humans weren't passive observers, they were active participants. And if ether was real, then prayer made sense. So did ritual, and healing, and intuition. That kind of truth couldn't be allowed. Not in a world built on control, on conformity, on compartmentalization. So they cut ether out. They scrubbed it from textbooks. They rewrote it as myth. They buried it beneath ridicule. But even though it was erased, its echo remains. You feel it in places that science can't measure. In the magnetic pull of a sacred space. In the chill on your skin when someone watches you. In the way music can alter your heartbeat or open your soul. Ether isn't an idea. It's experiential. It's the tingling silence before a breakthrough. The electric charge in a moment of clarity. The invisible current that flows through you during deep meditation. When someone says, "The energy in here feels heavy," they're talking about ether. When you say, "I'm in the flow," you're moving through it. And the Hermeticists, they knew this. Their entire system was built on it. The four classical elements, earth, air, fire, water, were never the full picture. Not without ether. Because ether wasn't just one of the elements, it was the field that held them all. Every sacred symbol, every temple, every mandala or geometric design, they weren't just spiritual art. They were etheric technology. They were built to move ether, to amplify it, to shape it. Think the ancient temples were just stone and ritual. They were advanced systems designed to interface with the field. And while we've forgotten how to use them, we haven't lost the ability. We've just been trained to ignore it. Ever think of someone, and they call you moments later? That's not coincidence. That's transmission, through ether. Ever walk into a place and instantly feel it's sacred? That's not mood, that's resonance. Ether is like an ocean you've always been swimming in. And only now are you beginning to remember it's there. Even science is slowly circling back. Quantum fields, zero-point energy, non-locality. These are all just modern shadows of what the ancients already knew. The vacuum of space, not empty. It's alive, charged, bursting with potential. Because here's what Hermeticism always taught. Matter is born from vibration. Vibration moves through ether, and ether is shaped by mind. That's the key. Ether isn't just there, it responds to intention, to focus, to thought. Which means your thoughts aren't just in your head. They echo outward. They influence. They shape outcomes. This is why manifestation works. Not because the universe is some genie granting wishes, but because ether is the delivery system for consciousness. And consciousness? That's you. So when they told you to only believe what you can see, what they were really doing was cutting you off from the most powerful part of yourself. Because once you sense the ether, once you remember how to use it, everything changes. You're no longer just flesh and bone. You're no longer just thoughts or emotions. You're a conductor. You become aligned with the very substance that holds galaxies in formation. You stop being a passive passenger in your own life, and instead, life starts moving through you, with you, as you. Transformation doesn't start when the world changes around you. It begins when your inner world cracks open. That's the real Hermetic initiation. The old alchemists weren't obsessed with turning lead into gold for money. That was the cover story. The real gold was consciousness. The true work was inner alchemy, taking the raw, reactive, wounded parts of yourself and transmuting them into something luminous. It's not self-improvement, it's self-reconstruction. Because most of what you call you is actually inherited, programmed, reactive. Initiation begins the moment you realize that, and choose to burn it down consciously. The ancients called it the path of fire, not the kind of fire that destroys, but the kind that purifies. And it always starts with discomfort. Pain is the signal. It means a false layer is trying to stay in control. It's the part of you that clings to old identities, familiar suffering, predictable patterns. But the deeper part, the part guided by ether, the part connected to your daemon, knows that pain is just pressure from a deeper truth trying to rise. Anxiety? Often, it's not dysfunction. It's misalignment. Numbness? It's not peace. It's suppression. And Hermeticism doesn't tell you to avoid those feelings. It tells you to confront them. You've been taught to run from your shadow, to fear the chaos within. But Hermetic wisdom flips that completely. Your darkness isn't a curse. It's the material. It's the ore you'll mine for gold. It's where the real treasure is buried. Alchemy isn't clean work. It's messy. It's volatile. It's wild. You don't bypass your wounds. You sit with them. You listen. You learn. You extract their power. And as you do, something incredible happens. Your identity stops being a cage and becomes a compass. You stop reacting. You start responding. You stop chasing meaning. You begin embodying it. That's why the Hermetic path was always revealed in stages. Nobody wakes up fully transformed. Awakening is a process, a slow peeling back of illusion. Layer by layer, you begin to see how every belief, every emotional trigger, every pattern in your life is a reflection of something inside. The world stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror, and that changes everything. Because once you stop blaming the external and start working with the internal, you gain access to something the Archons can't touch: your will. Inner alchemy teaches you how to wield that will, not impulsively, not recklessly, but with precision, not to control others, but to command your own reality. That's why the true Hermetic initiates walked quietly. They weren't chasing status. They weren't obsessed with showing off their knowledge. They were mastering vibration. Their thoughts were measured. Their words were intentional. Their emotions were not suppressed, but purified, aligned. They didn't need to dominate the world around them, because they had mastered the world within. And don't get it twisted, this is war, not against other people, but against the noise that's been embedded in you, that inner critic that whispers, "You're not ready. You're too much. You're not enough." Those voices? They're not yours. They're fragments of programming, residues of culture, echoes of conditioning, and every time you transmute one, you reclaim another piece of yourself. This is what real initiation means. Not a ritual in a secret chamber, not a certificate, not a robe, but 1,000 moments of quiet courage, facing your fear, forgiving yourself, freeing yourself, over and over and over again, until the weight you've been carrying for years finally lifts, until the chaos inside settles into clarity, until, for the first time, you feel it in your bones. Your life isn't random. It's a path, a process, a sacred unfolding. You don't need permission to begin. You don't need a master to unlock the door. Because you are the philosopher's stone. You are the vessel, you are the fire, you are the gold, and the Hermetic path. It doesn't promise ease, it promises evolution. And if you're still here, still watching, still feeling something deep stir beneath the surface, then your alchemy has already begun. We live in a world that loves to pretend it invented knowledge. It takes fragments of ancient truths, wraps them in technical jargon, publishes studies, and calls it a breakthrough. But here's the twist. The deeper modern science looks into the fabric of reality, the more it starts to echo the very teachings it once dismissed. Hermeticism isn't outdated. It's outpaced. The insights of Hermes, the initiates, the mystics, they weren't guesses, they were direct experiences. And science is only now beginning to catch up. Take quantum mechanics, for example. The observer effect tells us that watching a particle changes its behavior. Entanglement shows us that particles can stay connected across vast distances. What happens to one instantly affects the other. Sound familiar? That's not cold, objective materialism. That's as above, so below. That's consciousness shaping reality. That's the divine mind revealing itself at the subatomic level. Even the holographic universe theory, the idea that the entire universe is encoded in every part, that time and space are just projections of a deeper field of information. That's pure Hermeticism. It's the microcosm and the macrocosm. It's the ancient axiom lived out in physics labs. And while scientists try to stay clinical, the language starts to crack. They say things like, the universe looks suspiciously like a mind, like it's a coincidence. But the Hermeticists weren't guessing. They knew. They didn't need particle accelerators or AI simulations. They had the original lab, the self, the inner worlds. Their tools weren't microscopes and sensors. They used silence, breath, ritual, symbol. Their results weren't data points. They were transformation. Even in medicine, science is circling back to ancient wisdom. The placebo effect, once dismissed as an annoyance, is now one of the strongest pieces of evidence that belief affects biology, that the mind can shift chemistry. That thought can heal or harm the body. Modern research into energy healing, breathwork, frequency therapy, and meditation, all of it is rediscovered Hermetic medicine. It's just been rebranded. Even psychedelics, now studied in labs for their effects on trauma, depression, addiction, they're not new. They're ancient portals. Mystics knew these altered states weren't just chemical side effects. They were gateways. They dissolved the ego. They thinned the veil. They let you access the deeper layers of reality, the inner planes. And when people describe what they experience on these journeys, merging with universal intelligence, seeing sacred geometry, encountering entities of light, remembering a truth too big for words, that's not hallucination. That's reconnection. That's the same wisdom Hermes whispered across time. While the West busies itself dissecting molecules, the Hermeticist smiles. Because the experience speaks for itself. Modern science calls it remembering. Because this isn't about figuring it all out. It's about tuning back into what we always knew, that consciousness is primary, that matter is secondary, that intention is power. And that separation? It was always an illusion. Every scientific field, biology, physics, psychology, if you dig deep enough, you'll find yourself face to face with spirit. Not because the data leads you there, but because there's nowhere else to go. The further science pushes into the unknown, the more it runs out of language. And that's when it starts to stutter. That's when it bumps into mystery. That's when it reaches the threshold, the one the ancients mapped with symbols and silence. This isn't a call to reject science. It's a call to expand it, to stop pretending that mystery and measurement are enemies. They're not. They're partners. The Hermetic model never needed to be proven. Because it was lived. Tested in consciousness. Tested in direct communion with the Aether, and it passed the only test that really matters, transformation. We are living in a strange moment, a time when the veil between science and spirit is starting to thin, when what was once laughed at is now being rebranded as innovation. But let's be clear, this knowledge isn't new. It's ancient. It's been hidden, buried, demonized, then sold back to us in fragments. The sacred didn't disappear. We just stopped listening. But if you can learn to see past the modern packaging, if you can recognize the ancient truth underneath the new language, you'll start to see the deeper game. You'll realize that Hermeticism isn't just a philosophy. It's a technology, a spiritual science, built not on belief, but on experience. And right now, you hold the controls. Not when science gives you permission, not when your beliefs are accepted by society, but when you choose to reclaim your own perception. When you remember how to trust what you feel. The divine mind was never waiting for your proof. It's been waiting for your attention. And there's a reason this was never taught in school. A reason Aether, Hermes, and your daemon were all erased from your curriculum. A reason the divine mind got replaced with chemical determinism. Because this knowledge, it's not primitive, it's not naive, it's dangerous, not to people, to power. Because once you know that your thoughts shape reality, that you carry a divine spark, that unseen forces guide your path, you become uncontrollable. You stop depending on systems for salvation. You stop looking to experts for validation. You stop playing roles that were never yours to begin with. And that makes you a threat. The suppression of Hermetic knowledge wasn't an accident. It wasn't some passive loss to time or disinterest. It was intentional, coordinated, deliberate. Across empire after empire, the same story played out. Any knowledge that awakened the individual, that empowered sovereignty, was silenced. The Library of Alexandria? It wasn't lost to time. It was burned by those who feared what was inside. Mystery schools weren't just abandoned. They were shut down, their teachers executed, their symbols hijacked and watered down. What once held deep sacred power became decoration. What once initiated transformation became ritual without spirit. Sacred geometry was turned into wallpaper. Rituals became dogma. Symbols were drained of meaning and placed in stained glass windows no one understood anymore. And the thread, the living connection between humanity and the unseen world, was cut. Why? Because the Hermetic worldview is dangerous to those who crave control. It doesn't produce obedient citizens. It doesn't reinforce hierarchy. It doesn't serve the priesthood, the state, or the corporation. It tells you something radical. You are the temple. The divine doesn't live in a building, it lives in you. The kingdom of heaven isn't above, it's within. Spiritual authority can't be handed down. It can't be bought. It can't be granted. It must be reclaimed. It shows you how to listen to your daemon, how to align with the divine mind, how to work with the ether directly. No middleman required. And that's revolutionary. Because once you awaken to that truth, you can't be manipulated by systems built on fear and fragmentation. And trust me, those systems know this. That's why we live in a world of constant noise, distraction, division, superficiality. They drown you in trivia and call it news. They overload your senses with flashing lights, rapid cuts, endless scrolls, until the very idea of sitting in silence with yourself feels unbearable. Because they know, if you ever stop and listen, you might hear something else, something ancient, something real, something they can't filter or censor. Religion was never just about connecting you to God. It was about mediating your access to the divine. It became a structure that told you how to pray, what to believe, and who to obey. But the mystics, the Hermeticists, the Gnostics, The real initiates? They never asked for permission. They left the temples, they turned inward, and they found the one thing the world could never give: direct communion with the source of all things. That's why they were exiled, why they were demonized, why they were erased, not because they were wrong, but because they were right and dangerous. Governments have always feared the mystic, not because mystics start violent revolutions, but because they dissolve fear. And a population that no longer fears can't be ruled by manipulation. You can't sell obedience to someone who knows they're free. You can't sell hate to someone who sees the divine in every being. You can't exploit someone who no longer chases empty desire. Even modern education plays its part. It teaches memorization, not wisdom. It praises conformity, not creativity. It trains you to fit in, not wake up. Spiritual truth? It's been stripped from the classroom. In its place, facts, charts, formulas, disconnected disciplines. But if you look closer, if you listen differently, you'll still hear whispers. In the margins, in the stories of rebels, thinkers, artists, those who questioned the script, who wouldn't stay quiet. The war on awareness doesn't look like a war. It looks like normal life. It looks like endless entertainment, mindless rituals, social norms you never questioned. It looks like comfort, but underneath that comfort, it's a campaign to keep you asleep, to make sure you never remember. Remember what? That you're more than a body, more than a job, more than a consumer or a follower. You're a being of light moving through form. You are mind made manifest. You are the missing piece in a puzzle that was never meant to be solved from the outside. And once you start to remember that, the system shakes, because it's not built on force, it's built on belief. Your belief in its necessity. Your belief in your own smallness. Your belief that you're separate, limited, dependent. Remove that belief, and the illusion crumbles. They spent centuries trying to make you forget, but they failed. Because here you are, feeling that flicker deep inside, that quiet stir behind your thoughts, that sense that there's more. And once that spark lights, it spreads, quietly, relentlessly, until truth becomes louder than programming, until the veil thins beyond repair. You were never meant to stay lost in the illusion. The forgetting was temporary. The veil was meant to lift, not through force, but through awakening. And that's exactly where you are right now, right on the edge of remembering. Because the real purpose of Hermeticism was never to mystify you. It was to return you to yourself, to the source, to the divine mind from which everything flows. The universe isn't a dead machine. It's alive. It's thinking. It's dreaming. And you are one of its dreams, conscious, self-aware, and capable of waking up. This is what it means to be made in the image of the All, not in body, not in flesh and bone, but in structure. As above, so below. The divine mind thinks, and so do you. It creates through intention, and so do you. It holds patterns in place, and you experience them as beliefs, habits, emotions. And just like the All, you can change them. That's what makes you powerful. And that's also why you were lied to. Because the most dangerous thing you could ever realize is this: your thoughts are not meaningless. Your imagination is not foolish. Your intuition is not a fluke. The Hermetic teachings say the exact opposite. They tell us that imagination is the interface between the formless and the formed. That intuition is memory, truth bleeding through the veil. That your inner world isn't a shadow of reality, it's the blueprint for it. That's why awakening isn't just about insight. It's about responsibility. Once you realize how powerful your consciousness is, you can't pretend to be powerless anymore. Every word you speak, every thought you repeat, every intention you carry, it ripples outward. It shapes the field. It participates in the creation of everything. You are always creating, whether you realize it or not. The real question is, are you creating consciously, or are you running someone else's script? The divine mind doesn't want worship. It doesn't want flattery. It doesn't want rituals for tradition's sake. It wants resonance. It wants you to remember. And once you do, you stop living split between what you are and what you pretend to be. That's what alignment feels like. Not escaping the world, but embodying a higher level of awareness within it. Not rejecting the material, but infusing it with intention. Not transcending your body, but refining it into a vessel of spirit. This is what the Hermetic path really is. It's not about floating above life. It's about living life awake. When you align with the divine mind, you stop moving through life like a passenger. You become the co-author of the dream. You don't reject your experiences. You alchemize them. You don't avoid your shadow. You integrate it. You don't chase meaning. You embody it. Because you're not here to escape the world. You're here to transform it. From the inside out. And the beautiful paradox. The more you go inward, the more you begin to see that everything is already connected. The pain you carried had purpose. The challenges weren't random. The people you met were messengers. The signs were always there. You just weren't taught how to read them. But now, you're starting to see. And this is where the journey begins, not where it ends. Because the deeper you go, the more you realize there is no finish line. Just deeper layers of awareness, higher octaves of being, fuller expressions of truth. You're not here to become divine. You already are. You're just in the process of remembering. So what do you do with that remembering? That's the question. Do you shape your life with intention? Do you purify your mind? Do you elevate your actions? Because when you do, you become a bridge between the worlds, between realms, between the seen and the unseen. That's what the Hermeticists were pointing toward. Not information, not belief, transformation. The knowledge you've just touched. It's been hidden for centuries, not because it was weak, but because it was powerful. And now, here it is, in your hands. The decision is yours. Will you act on it, or let it fade? Because what you don't reclaim, they will. The path back to the divine mind is simple. It begins with attention, deepens with intention, and is mastered through alignment. That's the arc. That's the map. And now, you've seen the first layer. But don't stop here. If this resonated, if something stirred, then take the next step. Go deeper. Sign up for Insights Academy through the link in the description. It's free. It's uncensored. It's filled with the teachings they never wanted you to find, including the Kybalion, a free ebook you'll receive instantly. But more than that, it's a space for those who are waking up and ready to walk the path consciously. The real journey? It starts now. If this video lit a fire in you, let us know in the comments by saying, "I understood it." That one sentence is enough to shift the algorithm, to spark the community, to let others know they're not alone, and neither are you. The world taught you to look for answers outside yourself. In books, in gurus, in institutions, in degrees. But the deepest truths, they were never out there. They were always in here, within you. The divine mind wasn't locked in a temple or buried in a sacred cave. It was quietly waiting in the space behind your thoughts, in the stillness between your breaths, in the dreams you dismissed as imagination. Hermeticism doesn't ask you to believe. It asks you to remember. Because this isn't a religion. It's not a belief system. It's a technology, one that operates through vibration, intention, alignment, and awareness. And once you begin to engage with it, not just by reading, but by living it, you start to see reality bend, not with flashy miracles, but with quiet, undeniable precision. You'll notice synchronicities stacking, doors opening, old patterns falling away, people entering your life who carry messages you didn't even know you needed. You'll begin to realize that life was never random, that even your suffering had shape, even your confusion had a function, that every detour brought you back to this moment, this remembering. And with that realization comes a shift. You stop seeking. You stop seeking. You stop receiving. You stop asking, "What's my purpose?" You become the purpose. Because your purpose isn't something you find, it's something you express. It's the divine mind unfolding through you in real time. And when that expression is aligned, that's when you feel whole. That's when you stop leaking energy chasing validation. That's when the burnout stops. The people-pleasing stops. The confusion clears, because now you're moving from a deeper center, the center of your being, not your branding. You're not performing spirituality, you're embodying it. And you'll know it's real because you'll feel the resistance. The system doesn't applaud those who wake up. It pushes back, tests you. Old friends may not understand. Systems around you may feel threatened. Even your own mind might try to pull you back to the old path. But that's how you know you're on the real path. The Hermetic path isn't clean and linear. It's messy. It's layered. It's alive. It doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for presence, for honesty, for courage, for you to show up again and again when it would be easier to numb out. Because here's the truth most don't want to say: waking up is hard. It's easier to be asleep, to follow the program, to let someone else write the script. But if you're still here, still watching, still feeling that pull, then some part of you is ready. Not ready in the perfect, polished sense, ready in the real sense, ready to ask different questions, ready to stop blaming, ready to start owning the creative power you've always had. You are not here by accident. This moment, this message, this path, it's not a coincidence. You didn't find this by scrolling. It found you because something in you called it in. That's how Aether works. That's how the daemon speaks. That's how the divine mind moves, subtle, precise, undeniable. And now, the invitation is open. To step beyond belief, to step into experience, to stop talking about truth and start living it. Not by changing everything overnight, but by choosing something different right now. A new thought, a new word, a new act of alignment. That's how it starts. And when it does, when you begin to live from this place, you'll realize you don't have to convince anyone. You don't have to explain yourself. Because truth, once embodied, speaks for itself. It radiates. It magnetizes. It transforms. And that's the quiet revolution Hermeticism always pointed toward. Not a war fought with swords or systems, but with sight, with memory, with presence. Because once you see, you can't unsee. Once you remember, you can't forget. And once you align, you change everything. Not because the world changed first, but because you did. You've now arrived at the threshold, the end of the illusion, and the beginning of your awakening. This isn't the kind of ending where the credits roll. This is the kind where the lights come on. And you realize the movie was your life, and you were both actor and audience. Hermeticism doesn't promise you comfort. It doesn't promise that everything will magically fall into place. What it does promise is clarity, freedom, alignment. And with those three things, you don't need comfort, because you have something better: agency. The power to choose your thoughts, your focus, your reality. Not because life suddenly gets easy, but because you're no longer lost in it. You've remembered you're not just inside the dream, you're co-writing it. And now you understand what the ancient mystics whispered all along. The all is mind. The universe is mental. This is not philosophy. It's not religion. It's structure. It means that what you believe, what you imagine, what you focus on, is not private. It's not just in your head. It's active. It echoes. It shapes. It builds. Which means your real work isn't about fixing the world. It's about aligning with the truth of who you are and letting that alignment ripple outward. When you align, your vibration shifts. And when your vibration shifts, so does your field. And when your field shifts, you start affecting others, not by force, but by presence. That's why ancient mystics walked quietly, why initiates weren't loud, why true power never needs to announce itself. Because when you're aligned with the divine mind, you carry a frequency that does the talking for you. No preaching, no performing, just being. And that being is a revolution. Because we live in a world addicted to noise, to image, to projection. A world that teaches you to outsource your authority, to seek status instead of truth, to perfect the mask instead of healing the wound. But Hermeticism calls you inward, not to escape, but to embody, to bring divinity into density, to bring the unseen into form. You are not here to ascend out of your life. You are here to infuse your life with awareness, to walk as a channel, a vessel, a flame. You're here to remember that every breath is sacred, that every thought is creative, and that every choice is a spell you cast into the field. That's why your thoughts matter. That's why your feelings matter. Because they're not byproducts. They're building blocks. You've spent so long being told that you were small, that you were separate, that the universe was dead matter. But now you know the truth. You are consciousness in motion. You are mind wrapped in skin. You are an expression of the all. And nothing can take that from you. Not systems, not culture, not even your past. You can reclaim yourself right now. You can rewrite your story starting today. Because the divine mind isn't waiting, it's listening. And when you speak, not with words, but with alignment, it responds. That's the Hermetic path. Not a religion, not a theory, but a living relationship with the field of everything. And if you've made it this far, if you've stayed with this message, then your awakening has already begun. So here's your invitation. Step into it. Not with fear, but with grace. The old you, the programmed you, the one trained to doubt, to shrink, to stay safe, that version is dissolving. Not because you're erasing your past, but because you're alchemizing it. You're taking the raw material of your life and turning it into gold. And that gold? It's not something you hoard. It's something you give by being who you are, unapologetically, unconditionally, unstoppably. So now we return to the beginning. The lies you were told, the veil that was drawn, the blindness that was praised as logic, and you see it for what it was, a distraction, a cage, a forgetting. But that forgetting was never meant to be permanent. It was part of the cycle, the descent before the return, the night before the dawn, and now the dawn is here, because you remembered. You remembered the Aether. You remembered the Daemon. You remembered the divine mind. You remembered yourself. So now the final question is this. What will you do with what you've remembered? Will you integrate it? Will you live it? Will you choose it again and again, even when the world tries to pull you back? Or will you let it fade, because they are waiting? The systems, the programs, the distractions, but you are free, and freedom. It's not just a feeling, it's a practice, a decision, a way of being. So make that choice, reclaim your mind, Reclaim your frequency. Reclaim your life. You are the temple. You are the alchemist. You are the map. And this journey, it doesn't end here. It begins right now. If this message stirred something in you, let us know in the comments by writing, "I understood it." Let the algorithm hear you. Let the others find you. Let the signal amplify. And if you're ready to go deeper, to access the teachings they've spent centuries hiding, join Insights Academy now. It's free. It's uncensored. It's yours. You'll receive your free copy of the Kybalion instantly upon signing up. But more than that, you'll receive a reminder that you were never lost. You were simply remembering your way home. Welcome back.